Vanessa was having a toothache. Then the next day I went to my boss and tell my boss that Vanessa was having this problem, and he said, no, Lois, let me take you to the dentist. Then he took me to the dentist, and the dentist was asking me, hey, why your daughter was not brushing her teeth?
Because she couldn't afford a toothbrush. And it was really in that moment that I realized that she couldn't afford a toothbrush because I wasn't paying her enough, and that I was actually an employer who was exploiting my worker, and that is fundamentally wrong.
Pockets here, no pockets.
Here in South Africa, it's not uncommon to see domestic workers, often black, out and about during the day, at schools, grocery stores, and parks. But one question remains. Could you, as an employer, live off the salary you pay your family's helper?
A domestic worker is a person who wakes up in the morning, come in your house, and make you a cup of tea, making breakfast for you and children, or maybe your husband if you are married, and doing the lunch box for children, taking children to school or crashes, wherever, and comes back and clean the house. The word I'm going to say is not right. Workers work like slaves.
Determined by a wage table, which is updated almost every year. So the wage will increase, and the increase is normally based on CPI plus a certain percentage.
On public holidays, for instance, or Sundays, where the domestic worker would be entitled to double the hourly rate of wage, and yeah, I think those are probably important provisions that employers need to bear in mind, and also domestic workers need to know their rights.
Now you have to pay the school fund, pay rent, as I'm not living in. You have to pay rent, paying transport. It's doing nothing. It's doing nothing. I've started work a long time ago. They call it bondus. That is what I'm staying. So you see how terrible it is. And now I'm old now. I have to go home where I'm going to stay. In that house, people say she's been working for the rest of her life, but look at. So it's hurting really. It's not good.
Food is very expensive, and there is no supermarket for domestic workers. All of us were going in one supermarket, and you find that when an employer is coming back from a supermarket, sometimes the worker is accompanying the employer to go and do the shopping at Pick and Pay. When they come back, the employer will say, oh, food is expensive. What about that worker who is earning 1,800?
We pay people so little that they compromise on nutrition, they compromise on healthcare, they compromise on education, they compromise in every area of their lives. And so as we began this journey of trying to discover what was a living wage, we realized that we had to pay a wage to our domestic worker that took into account her basic needs, her needs for adequate nutrition, her needs for dignified shelter. We talked about things that would break her out of generational poverty. And so we paid all of her expenses for 3 months. We worked out the average of what was required. And we were quite shocked when we saw how much Lois needed to live, and her family needed to live, compared to what we had been paying her. So when she started working for us, she came to us on a salary of 2,400. We increased that to 3,300.
We thought we were being extremely generous because we knew that some of our friends were paying their domestic workers a lot less.
Yeah, and her expenses were sort of between 8 and 10,000 rand a month. So, well, if the husband and wife are working, a living wage is what's required to live divided by 2. So we divided that by 2, and then we set her wage at that stage, whatever, 6 years ago, at 5,000 rand a month. And yeah, it was extremely challenging for us. We didn't have that money to do that. So again, in order to do that, we had to make some adjustments in our lives. We continue in South Africa to talk about trickle-down economics. And so we talk about economic growth being the solution to extreme poverty. But if we don't deal with the fundamental problem of inequality, we will never deal with extreme poverty. There's 2 ways to move towards a living wage. The one is to cut down on your excess, or cut down where you can cut in order to ensure that your worker gets more. So cut down on pleasures, you know. The second way that you can pay a living wage is to employ your domestic worker for less time for the same salary.
I thought it was folding in half, but no.
Yeah, it's not. I work happily. Even if it's lots of work, I don't feel it because I'm happy. I know that by the end of the day, I'm going to eat. Yeah. I'm happy. I'm working happy with lots of smiles.